And welcome back everyone. Round 1 from the European Chess Championship has just concluded, at least for me. And yeah, I'm gonna jump into the game. Many of you have pointed out that I shouldn't spoiler the result of the game, so let's have a look. I had the black pieces against a German gentleman, Roger Lorenz, with a rating of about 2200. And he started with d4. And I chose a somewhat funny move order by going e6 and after c4, knight f6, kind of inviting the French defense, which he didn't go for. And I was kind of, yeah, it was also obvious to me that he wouldn't go there because he's a pure d4 player. But I thought I would kind of confuse him, which didn't really work because he immediately went c4. I went knight f6, knight c3, bishop b4, and he went for the e3 nimzo, short castle, bishop d3. And here I kind of played a move he wasn't familiar with, this move rook e8, which I think personally is quite interesting, especially if you're trying to play for a win. The main line with d5, also c5 is of course is a big move. After knight f3 or also a3, white is in general quite solid. Here we have this sort of huge main line leading to this. This would be the Karpov line if I'm not entirely incorrect. b6, bishop g5, there's a lot of theory here, and white in general is very solid. But in this game I chose the move rook e8, which looks a little bit mysterious, but actually there is one idea behind it, and we even saw this in the game. So he went knight f3, and now the point is I'm taking here and going d6. So I didn't put my pawn on d5 yet to have this option to go d6. According to the computer, after rook e8, the best move for white is to go knight e2, but now black argues the knight is maybe slightly misplaced on e2, and now I will play d5. At least black has stopped white from going knight f3 here, and after short castle, black has quite a couple of moves, like b6 for example, and rook e8 in general is also quite useful, because after a3 the bishop will drop back to f8, where it's quite nicely placed, and the rook on e8 is also quite good, since if white takes on d5, after e takes d5, the rook will have this half-open e-file. But my opponent went knight f3, and now I took. I guess I could also start with d6, probably not much difference there. I took, went d6, and after short castle went e5. And this is a pawn sacrifice, because he took knight takes e5, and now rook takes e5 doesn't work because of bishop h7 when I'm losing the queen on d8. But I was familiar with this idea in general, which is quite funny. How I knew this idea, and I knew it if white goes knight f3, there's this move h6, which I checked some time ago, I think 1 year ago, and after knight c3, bishop b4, e3, short castle, bishop d3, there's the same idea for black to take here, and after d6, short castle, also to go e5. So I knew that I checked this position and that here it's okay for black, again with somewhat of the same idea. And now the only difference is that the pawn is on h6 instead of the rook being on e8. In the game I thought this should at least not be a worse version for me. So that was how it was in the game. So the rook is on e8 instead of the pawn being on h6. Which again I thought is somewhat more useful than this pawn move h6. So queen e7, now I'm preparing to take on e5, and here he went for f4, which already I kind of felt like should be wrong. Knight f3 I assumed would be the best move, because it was also the best move after the line with h6. And now bishop g4 was the idea, or at least the move I intended to play, when black has very good long-term compensation. So I'm intending to go knight d7, knight e5 possibly, or knight c5. And white's problem is, first of all, the pawn structure, and second of all, the bishop on c1, which doesn't really have a bright future. But he went for f4, and now knight b7, quite logical, knight takes d7, bishop takes d7, and e4. By the way, I also thought that taking is probably not the best. Knight f3 would have perhaps been a better choice, not to give up this tension just yet, but also here I'm doing very well, like knight c5 is coming, and maybe b6, bishop b7, or bishop a6 next, and white is just struggling to finish his development in general. But he took bishop takes e7, and now e4 was his idea, and I had to be quite sure that I have enough play here, since if white gets another move e5, I'm probably just lost, or at least much worse. But in general, it feels like black should have enough play here. All of my pieces are in play, and for white, it's not really the same. If he doesn't go e4, I'm simply going to go bishop c6 and put the knight to e4, when again the bishop on c1 will never get out, and black has such an easy play in this position. So he went e4, now I spent some time, went rook 88, and here he went queen c2. Instead of rook d8, I was also thinking about bishop g4, but here after queen c2, knight takes e4, rook e1, my pieces are placed a little bit awkwardly, and especially after bishop f5, probably some ideas like g4 don't work just yet, but I will have to watch out for this. And yeah, now g4 probably runs into queen h4, so that probably doesn't work. But in general, I would much prefer to have the bishop on c6 as it happened in the game. So I went rook d8 and now queen c2. e5 I thought doesn't work because of bishop f5. Actually, I was calculating something quite nice here. So the point is he cannot take because his queen on d1 is hanging. So I thought e takes f6, queen c5 check, king h1. And after rook takes d3, I calculated queen h5 with some ideas with queen g5. And here I thought that rook h3 might work. I haven't checked this with the engine yet. But those were some ideas I had, even though now I see also queen f2 should be quite good for me. At least it looks very nice. But I saw this idea with rook h3, which seemed very nice to me as well, because after g takes h3, there is bishop e4. Even though now I see that here there is rook f3, and I'm not gonna pretend like I saw all of this, but it is checkmate in the end. But I'm not using an engine, just to keep that in mind. I'm just going through this with my own brain now. So I thought queen g5 and then g6, and I thought he still cannot take. And now I have this threat with queen f2 again. And his queen is also trapped. I have the idea to go h6 next. So I thought this line is quite cute with rook h3, but again, perhaps queen f2 also just wins on the spot. This could also be a thing. But anyway, rook h3 is quite a nice idea, I thought. But he went queen c2, and now I took on e4, and after rook e1, bishop c6. This is what I was saying before. Now I don't have the bishop on f5, but on c6, where it's, in my opinion, much better placed, because also he's generating some threats against the white king. His pawn on g2 is kind of a long-term target. I thought at this moment that his best chance to play for a draw would be to take here and rook d1. I was spending quite a lot of time with this position here. My issue is kind of with this pin, and if I'm not careful, for example, rook takes c4, I thought bishop a3, now bishop e7 is a threat, so I thought c5, and now something like rook d3, for example, I thought that rook e1 is coming, rook d1 is coming, and it's not so easy to get rid of this pin. For example, I think this was my calculation here, for example, king e7, and now I thought that white can repeat the moves, even though now there is maybe bishop e6, yeah, not entirely sure about all of this, but still white has some threats here. I also thought maybe that bishop a3 is not the only move, maybe bishop e2 is possible too, but in general this feels a bit wrong with this pin here. I always have to watch out not to lose the piece. But then in the end I saw this move rook e8, which I thought is at least much simpler for black to play, not requiring much calculation at all. And even though white has some drawing chances here, his position is just extremely unpleasant. So the idea of rook e8 is just that I'm going to move my bishop next. For example, I don't know, bishop a3, and then I'm going to go bishop e6 or bishop c6. Also bishop a4 is one idea. And he's just stuck with those pawns, which are just weak in the long run. Also I have some rook e2 ideas. So this would have just been very unpleasant for him, but still probably the better choice. He went rook e1 instead, now bishop c6. Bishop e3, and here I spent way too long, 20 minutes again. Before that I was quite happy with my time management, but here I just spent too much time, which in this game worked out, but I'm gonna try to limit the so-called side note, the time trouble in this tournament. Yeah, that was not acceptable to spend that much time. Queen f6 is though a very good move, so I could say that maybe spending the time here did pay off. Instead, I just wasn't sure here. I was always worried about the knight on e4 dropping off at some moment, even though it's very, very well protected for now. But I somehow had the urge to play f5, just consolidating the knight. But at the same time, I knew this move is wrong, because white will get bishop d4 and then the bishop to e5, when all of a sudden it wouldn't be as easy for me to convert anymore, because I don't have that much play anymore with this strong bishop on e5. So then I was thinking about all sorts of moves, like bishop a4, for example. By the way, I forgot to mention one thing, which, yeah, right here. Sorry for jumping here, but I wanted to point out one variation, which I was also spending some time here. You see, I also spent 20 minutes here, which was also not okay, when going knight e4, but instead bishop a4 was something I thought about quite a lot. because again I wasn't sure about this endgame right here, so I was looking for alternatives. And instead I was thinking about bishop a4, takes, rook d3, and originally I thought that after e5 now I can give a check, king h1 and go knight e4. That was something I calculated some 6-7 moves before, but I just missed in my calculation that this rook is hanging when I'm just lost. So then I tried to make this position work with knight e4 immediately, but here I wasn't sure if he takes on a7. He is 2 pawns up at the moment. I still thought I should have excellent compensation. But after b6, now I thought bishop a3, queen d7, queen b7, and his queen is coming back. It's not really trapped. Also his king is safe for now. I don't have any immediate threats, and here I wasn't entirely sure if this is that good for me anymore. So that was one of the reasons why I also spent 20 minutes here. So in the end I took here and then went for this move queen f6, which I think is quite smart because I'm stopping him from going bishop d4 basically for a long time. Because then his pawn on f4 would always be hanging. So I'm quite happy with this move. He went rook c1, defending the pawn on c3. Of course, another idea of queen f6 is to possibly take on c3 at some moment. Now went h5, which I think is also a good move. Just that the pawn on h7 is often not hanging if I move the knight, and at the same time I wanted to gain space on the king side with h4, often even connected with some attacking ideas when I go h3 later. He went c5, which surprised me quite a bit. I thought that now he doesn't have the option to take on a7 at some point anymore. Now anyway it probably doesn't work because again I thought I'm taking on c5, but still c5 is a move which kind of limits the bishop on e3. Anyway, it's hard to say what else he can do here. His position is already quite hard to play. He went c5, h4, and now bishop c4. I understood his idea that now that he wants to go bishop d4, when after queen takes f4, rook f1, then the pawn on f7 would be hanging. And that's why I played rook e7. Instead, the computer gives kind of a small question mark here. Instead, h3 would have been quite strong. This is one thing which the computer told me after the game, that here after g3, then knight g5, I think here is just winning on the spot. And I have the threat of knight f3, and after takes queen f3, it will be devastating for white here. I just have to watch out about bishop f7 here when king h7 would lose due to rook f1. So maybe I can just go king h8 here. That could be the solution when again looks like white is getting checkmated. And what I missed perhaps was that bishop d4. Yeah, I think here I somehow forgot about this idea that I take on d4 and now I just have knight d2 check. And yeah, I don't know why I didn't go h3. Honestly, I went rook e7 instead, which still is quite good for me. So not such a huge mistake. Rook d1. Again, idea was if now bishop d4, again, I totally forgot about that I can probably just take here. And again, it's over. Anyway, I wanted to protect the pawn on f7 in the long run. That was kind of my idea in simple terms. So rook d1, I went rook e8. This was also an important moment. I thought about taking here for a second and then to take on c3, but this is probably quite a serious mistake because after rook d8, all of a sudden his pieces become quite active. Also his two bishops are finally sort of opening up. And here even the endgame, perhaps he has quite good drawing chances. Also queen e2 wasn't entirely clear to me during the game because queen h5 could be there. So here I think I made a good decision just keeping the rooks on the board. And now also I have many discoveries with the knight when the bishop on e3 would be hanging. So he went bishop d4, queen takes f4, and now he went rook f1. Apparently rook e3 is a better defense, but anyway, I'm a pawn up, and for the moment the pawn on f7 is well defended, so after something like queen g5 here, it should also be quite good for me. For example, king f8 was the computer move shown here. I guess preparing f5 or f6 on the next move when black is probably also winning. But he went rook f1, queen g5, and now queen c1, which loses immediately. I thought during the game that rook f3 is probably the best defense, but it's even not clear what he's threatening in this position. I mean, he wants to go rook f1, but whenever rook f1 comes, I have bishop d5. So rook f3 is kind of a move that just doesn't lose on the spot, but at the end of the day will most likely lose anyway. He went queen c1, and now I took and went knight d2, having the fork on bishop and rook. He went bishop b3, and here another nice final touch. Of course, many moves are winning for black. For example, king f8 would also be more than good enough, following it up by f6, but I went bishop b5. And now white is in a dilemma. Well, before I explain bishop b5, I will point out the move rook e1 as well, which is not good because of bishop takes f7. But in general, I wanted to trade the rooks here, which is kind of basic thing, but if some of you are new to chess, if you're material up, you should, in most cases, try to exchange as many pieces as possible, because then your conversion will be easier because your opponent has less counterplay. So that was kind of the idea here by trying to prepare rook e1, which I did by going bishop b5, because now I'm attacking the rook, and if he goes to f4, which he did in the game, or on any other square on the f-file, I have rook e1 followed by checkmate on f1. Here he resigned after king f2, rook f1, it would be checkmate. But the other idea is if he moves along the d-file, then I have rook e1 check. Now I'm exchanging rooks, and conversion should be quite easy. And if he goes c4, I would simply go back to c6, and now his bishop is restricted by his own pawn on c4, when again I'm perhaps going rook e1 next, or even rook e2, which is completely winning. So I think that was a nice final touch. So I won the game, now we can finally reveal it, and I'm quite happy with my game. I will definitely try to work on my time management even more for the next games, since that's just something I don't want to end up with, time trouble. You're just going to lose way too many games unnecessarily with that, or not win them. So that's kind of my main goal for this tournament, have a good time management. But other than that, I think I'm in pretty good form. At least I'm quite happy with this game. I would say that I saw quite a couple of things, quite many things. So I'm very happy with how it went. First round in this tournament in general is quite tough, because even though you play a low-rated opponent, they're all ambitious to play and to win. And you also see many underrated players, like especially here there are many Romanian youngsters and Ukrainian youngsters as well playing in the tournament. Also many Turkish youngsters, which, yeah, they often tend to be somewhat underrated, or just to be extremely tough opponents. So yeah, therefore I'm very happy to win the first round. And yeah, off to a good start. Tomorrow I'm gonna have the white pieces. Well, I guess so, I hope so. But yeah, I'm quite happy with how everything is going here. Just to give you a small update on how it is. The hotel is good. Yeah, there's a gym which I haven't checked out yet, but I'm planning to. The town in general, Efri Nord, is, yeah, there's not much happening here since we're out of season. Most restaurants and even shops are closed. But anyway, we're chess players, so we're not here for any parties and so on. At least I am not. And yeah, I think that was it for today. I hope you enjoyed the recap. Definitely let me know, as always, what you would like me to cover in the event. I was also thinking about perhaps covering some other games if I see some which are interesting. But definitely let me know which format you would prefer. If you enjoyed today's video, then please leave a like and subscribe to the channel and drop a comment. It really helps the algorithm. So thank you guys for watching, and I'm going to see you probably tomorrow. Take care.